The best way to predict the future is to create it. You're listening to We Are Future Talk series, the show that helps you to future-proof your career, your team, and your business.
We give you tangible insights to reimagine leadership and talent development for a more complex, more connected, and more competitive environment so you can stay on top of your game.
Hi, I'm Petra Singh, founder and lead consultant for brand and talent at the 360 Talent Co. and Impact.
And my name is Jen Ryan, lead consultant for global teams and culture at the 360 Talent Co.
Make sure you subscribe to get weekly tips and tricks on all things future of work.
And it would mean the world to us if you can leave us a rating and review so we can help more leaders to create the future together.
Now let's dive in and take control over your future. Can you believe it's already the end of 2019 and we are 20 episodes into our We Are Future Talk series. And today we've got a different episode for you. I'm joined by my co-host Jen Ryan, and we are going to give you a snapshot of the last 20 episodes and the gold nuggets that we got out of those interviews. Jen, how are you doing today?
Yeah, really good. I'm glad to be doing this one, doing something different and just really reflecting on some of the learnings that we've had this year, Petra. I guess we can start from the beginning in terms of that first episode and what we got out of it.
Yeah. To be honest, I don't like listening to my own voice, and over the last 2 days, I binge listened back to our episodes, and to be honest, I got so many gold nuggets out from those conversations that I didn't pick up when we actually interviewed those people.
Yeah, well, absolutely, because I think it's different when you're actually interviewing them. You're thinking about what types of things you want them to talk about, but when you're actually listening as a listener, it's a very different experience, and you're just taking in the information for what it is. And I'm the same. I listen to mine in the car, and I think, once I get over the fact that it's my voice, I hear it and get some new learnings from it, even though it's maybe the second or third time.
Exactly. Yeah. And also because I'm a big fan of taking notes from anything that I hear and it resonates with me. So what we've done is we've created a download also for you guys to get after this episode, that you see what are the key takeouts from those conversations in a snapshot. And we want to elaborate on what it actually means for us when we refer back to those insights from our speakers. So we want to start with our first guest, and our first guest was Nicolas Baby. And there were probably one thing that really resonated with me the most. It's when he said, when he was still in the CEO role, that he always said to new hires, I hope you don't know how you do your job. Because if you do, you just continue doing the same things that you've done previously. And in an innovative cultural environment, we need you to think differently. We don't want you to just solve problems, but we want you to create problems and ask different questions. How do you feel about this?
Yeah, I really liked the fact that he called it out as creating problems. It's not something you would expect to hear from someone experienced in a role such as his. But when I think about what that actually means, it's that whole disruptive kind of thinking, as in don't do it just the way that you do it or assume that that's the way it needs to be done in the future. By creating problems, we create new solutions, right? So I think that really resonated for me in terms of not taking on new projects or opportunities that I've already done before, because there is just that nature of wanting to do what what you know works, and maybe not necessarily innovating because of that. I don't know if that's the same for you, but it absolutely resonated and changed a bit of my focus on the types of opportunities I took on this year.
Yes, it also taps into the belief that whatever got you here won't get you to where you want to be. Yeah. And in such a fast-paced environment, it's so true that the biggest asset that we had previously could be our biggest hurdle and hindrance to actually get us moving further, that we are not as nimble. And he also came up with the skill sets that we need in order to pivot. And he mentioned that we need to look into where the trends are going, not where we are right now, because otherwise we're again just stagnating and not getting anywhere.
Yeah, I think in regards to that too, when you're a business, quite sizable business or an organisation, by the time you actually implement, the ideas that you had at the planning stage may not even be relevant anymore. It does take a lot longer. And so I think that intention of always looking into the future or planning for the future is necessary, because by the time you get to the point of actually making the changes, it just kind of, it may not be something that's actually necessary as well. And I think that's a very different kind of thinking to maybe the typical organization.
Yeah. And also the last thing that really stood out for me was his emphasis on AI, artificial intelligence, how sophisticated technology already is to pick up on how humans think and how we can interact with technology these days, which means that it's not about solving more problems, because in a second you can solve problems, a machine or a technology can solve problems down the track. It's about you creating more problems and asking more questions, and this is where, as a practical takeout for you guys, to ask more questions and be more curious about, is it still the right thing to do what we're doing at the moment? Challenging the status quo, challenge your own role and your own skill sets needed in this role. Can it be done any better? Is it still relevant, or can it be already automated? And if so, what can you do in order to jump to the next S-learning curve?
Yeah, absolutely, totally agree. So with our second one, we had Sank Siddharth, which was an interview that you did, Petra, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so one of the key things that he talks about is just this intention, or this idea of an emerging market, and the fact that we have more opportunities than ever to create income in different ways that probably we didn't even have, like even a couple of years ago or 5 years ago.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So he talked about the equality that technology creates, because also now smaller businesses and smaller markets, emerging markets, have access to opportunities where they can create income with their knowledge. Say the Philippines, for example, or India or Africa, emerging markets where you've got a big population, but often not the opportunities in the country. They can now tap into a global economy and create wealth and opportunities for themselves.
Yeah. Definitely. I'm pretty passionate about this as well, that global workforce, and just giving the way technology has moved has given everyone the accessibility to get jobs that they didn't necessarily have the opportunity to have before. But I also think as individuals to start thinking about the way that we make money or the way that we receive income, that we need to start diversifying that. So what I'm noticing is that people are taking on more than ever side projects or freelancing in a way to start a consulting business. This hybrid of work that people are doing, and it's not about getting it's not about getting busier or taking on more work, but actually just diversifying our time a little bit more so that we have different income streams and not putting all our eggs in one basket essentially through one job. I think that's become definitely the norm, and it helps create that flexibility in the lifestyle as well, when we are tapping into different industries but staying in our lane. So that's something that I think as individuals, if people aren't doing now, is to start looking into. And it won't necessarily mean quit your job. Definitely stay in your job. There's a financial reason why you're in that, but you can start exploring other avenues for making income through something casually. Like there are different platforms that allow us to do that, things like Airtasker and Fiverr. So for very little investment or time, you can start to earn income very easily, and then from there you can start to build something or commercialize on something more. And that's a really exciting thing, I think, for people, where it was always a scary thing to start your own business or to be entrepreneurial. I don't know if you felt the same, Petra, but it's definitely something I've seen.
For sure. And it's also so interesting to see the shift of mindset, because back in the days when entrepreneurship was this dirty word and you had a side hustle, means that you actually don't make it in your proper job, or if you've got a part-time job, it's like, oh, so you're not making enough money. It was always associated with something negative.
Yes.
Whereas these days it's like, oh, so you're not having a side hustle? What's wrong with you?
So funny. Yeah, that's so true.
So in terms of the takeout, what Sank also honed in terms of the future skill sets is especially the cross-cultural communication part, is honing onto those soft skills that we embrace the changes that technology bring with it. So if we can tap into those global workforces and skill sets, it also means that we need to communicate with them where they are at. So learning the culture, learning different languages, but also collaborate much more. These are the skill sets that Sank sees as skill sets in demand.
Yeah, cool. Then our next episode was with Andrew Grill. So with Andrew, probably one of the key takeouts was his, I want to call catchphrase, to get digital, you need to be digital. Mm-hmm. What does that mean for you, Petra?
It's such a great term to describe just getting there. Get your hands dirty, play around, don't be afraid of it. If you don't know what Bitcoin is, just don't let anyone else explain what Bitcoin is. Buy a few dollars of Bitcoin and play around and then make up your own mind. And the same with technology. Don't be afraid that it could take away your job, that it could impact your life negatively. See what it actually means and be curious.
Yeah, I have often talked about digital assets or building digital assets with clients, meaning you need to start looking at what you put online or what you invest in online as a digital asset. So anything from your social media profile, it may not be something you're making money from now, but absolutely it is an asset that you can commercialize. And there's obviously different ways you can do that. And we've seen some people do that really successfully. But now that there is so much sharing and so much collaboration and so much opportunity to start building a business or start to, as a business, go into markets that we've never gone before, that everything that we have is essentially, even though it's not physically something we can see, it's absolutely something that has a value in the market or in a commercial sense. And it's a very different type of thinking, I think, because people think, oh, okay, it's on the internet, I don't need to worry about it. But we know, for example, because of even our network, where people have not gotten jobs based on recruitment strategies, looking at their different social media platforms or looking at their public content to see if they align to the type of person that they want to recruit. So if we haven't been looking at what we're putting online as something that is an asset, then wake up pretty much, because absolutely everyone is making decisions or making a decision on what you are like as a brand based on what you're putting out there.
Exactly. And one of his other phrases that he mentioned was, a fool with a tool is still a fool. And this is exactly what you just mentioned. Just because we've got technology, we can still use it in a bad way if we are not careful of what it actually means long term. And probably one more takeout from this conversation is working out loud. I hadn't known about this phrase before, but he was all about sharing. It's not about what you know that's valuable to an organization, but what you share with people. And there is still in large organizations this scarcity mindset as to, I'm not going to tell them what I'm working on, it could take away my ideas. And it's very much a societal. Whereas in this day and age, it's all about collaboration. How can we create something bigger and better based on leveraging of each other's ideas and experiences and not making our own little bubble and make decisions based on what we think is reality.
Yeah, I love that. I think that unforgiving transparency, that if leaders can start showing that sooner rather than later, that's one very quick way to build trust within your organisation or within your teams. It's something that I see more and more leaders trying to do, and especially when they don't have all the answers. Sometimes that can be really scary as a business to be saying, hey, look, this is something that we're aware is a problem for us as an organisation. However, just so you know, we acknowledge it, we are aware of it, it's creating some uncertainty, but this is the world we live in, and we'll continue to keep communicating with you as we work through those things, give us feedback. I think there's just so many benefits to being like that now, and more people want to work for leaders like that, where they feel like they're actually being taken on that journey as opposed to not being told anything or being behind closed doors until they know what they're going to do. That in itself is like a real powerful thing that we're moving towards, I think.
And also following on to the digital assets that you mentioned before, it's not necessarily just limited to the organization internally, but also sharing with external stakeholders in the world. Because future employees, they're looking for leaders to work for, and they're doing the research based on the profiles that they're seeing, based on the content they put out there, and make up their mind if they want to work there or not. And I was just coming back from running social media and LinkedIn training, especially for senior executives. And there was still a bit of this scarcity mindset about what if we get a negative comment, or if our past employees would smash us with something, or if there's a controversial statement that happens in the industry. And as you just leveraged on that, it's not about hiding, it's not about being quiet, it's about bringing it up and embracing the challenge and putting it out there, sharing it, and say, but this is what we're working on.
Yeah, I think it humanizes an organization. It just, I would rather work for an organization where I felt like I had some authenticity, or I had values that really aligned to that organization, and the people or the way that they communicate or the types of people that work there, absolutely for me are part of that decision making. And similarly, when we look at clients, Petra, I think we're the same as well. Are they the types of people we want to work with or be associated with? Because, you know, especially when we are embarking on different case studies or different kinds of work, we want to make sure that it's work that both parties get value out of. And so we're very particular with who we attract, or also who's talking to us. And I say that as a good thing because, you know, we're very aware that we want to be associated with brands that also have the same kinds of attributes to how we want to work or the future of work as well.
Yeah, because this is where you get the best results, when you already share the same beliefs and the same values, and you don't try to convince the other party that you are right or this is wrong. It's not about that. It's about what is your common reality and how can you build on that.
Yeah, definitely.
And moving on to our next conversation with David Thomas, that was such an eye-opener for me personally, because David is a specialist in the Chinese economy. And he opened the statement, or my world, to this new economy, that it's the 7-people family creates such a different dynamic in the economy. Because we've seen the millennial child has the parents and then the parents of the parents. Mm-hmm. And they've got such a wealth in this generation that there is so much economic power in this up-and-coming generation that we haven't even tapped into. And in fact, it's like 300 million Chinese millennials are what he calls cashed up. And we haven't even tapped into it because of this scarcity mindset of spying, of surveillance. And what he said is, we're missing out on so many opportunities because of this scarcity. What we rather should do is we should focus on our cultural intelligence, which is the next level of IQ, then EQ, and now it's the cultural intelligence.
Yeah.
So maybe, Jen, what do you think about this cultural competence?
Yeah, I agree with you. This is such an interesting take-up from David. Especially being in Australia, we do so much trade, and even when I look at some of the partnerships that we have with Asian countries, this should be a big part of our world or our understanding. But something like the one-child policy population has meant that this has happened, where we have one person or third generation in the Chinese families getting essentially all the inheritance from 2 or 3 generations beforehand, and now as a result they're making very different decisions in terms of their work and their business. Similarly, we could say in Australia, when we look at the 70s and the 80s, where there was a real spike in immigration, you look at all of us, we are all either immigrants or partnered with people who are immigrants, or second generation Australians born from immigration. So that in itself brings very different talent locally, very different thinking, very different cultural sets. And so that cultural intelligence is absolutely something that I will personally take into 2020 to understand a little bit more, because the same way I think emotional intelligence for a lot of businesses is a number one priority is building that self-awareness and awareness of others, that cultural intelligence will just take it to a next level. It'll be about group dynamics then, and about where do we put these people or these talents based on those cultural values or the different types of thinking that they could bring to the table.
Yeah, and the question on how we can actually prepare to be culturally more intelligent is very similar to Andrew's takeout, play around, which means travel there, immerse yourself in the culture, eat their food, live with the population in the same way that they live. So again, it's about being more curious and immerse yourself into what you don't know yet and have fun with it.
Now, the next one is Ratchet Marty. So he is from Go One, and he had talked us through some of the key future of work trends in the learning space. So e-learning is obviously something that is rising at a phenomenal rate. But talk to us about what you got out of it in regards to Ratchet, because that was an interview you did.
Yeah, so basically we were talking about the changed way of learning, and we were talking a lot on this micro certifications and micro skills, that the traditional way of learning and having degrees for years and years is not relevant in this fast-paced environment anymore. It's about choosing what you need in order to do your job better and learn this in a short and sharp environment. It could even be a 1-hour course. That's often all it takes to upskill and be more flexible. And also the opportunities to tap into the knowledge means that people can just quicker jump onto the next learning curve, keeps them also engaged, keeps them curious and more valuable in an organization.
Yeah, I love that term micro-learning, because I think the same way, podcasts are on the rise, or, videos are on the rise, and that they're the ones that are only going for a minute. People only have the time, or can very much integrate the learning in 1 minute, 5 minute spaces of time versus what traditionally might take them 2 or 3 hours to learn. I think the fact that e-learning is on the rise is showing that flexibility again is very much becoming the way that we not only work but also learn, and that if people aren't considering integrating learning on a day-to-day basis, and it's really something that we need to start doing in order to ensure that they still remain relevant.
Totally, which is such a good segue into our next conversation with Christian Krom. And Christian mentioned that work and learning will blend together. There's not just one or the other. It's all about the personal growth and the personal development, which is the key results and that people are working towards. They're not just learning because they have to, but because they want to. And that we also live in the best time ever to build a career based on what we enjoy doing, what we are good at, but also what people are valuing. And the question on how we can actually find our purpose was really well answered by Christian, and said, don't look in the future and see what could be the case, look backwards and see what in the last 2 months did you enjoy, what were those defining moments that stuck with you, and then ask yourself why. What was it about those moments that really excited you?
Yeah, I think that's really a great thing for exactly the same reasons that you said there as well, Petra. I think that work, it's sort of like what work and life balance used to be, where it used to be very separate things, but very much now we're finding that studying, personal life, professional life, they more and more become an integrated force.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I think that's just, I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. I think that's just going to become more integrated in the way that we work.
Absolutely. And then our next conversation was with Michelle Duval.
Yeah.
And that was your conversation.
Yeah, Michelle was very interesting. So her background, or something that she has been working on over the years, is looking at integrating AI in coaching. So something that had traditionally always been a human-based service, so coaching being, conversations, talk to talk, is she had been working in the background with her team, building essentially what are the behavioural patterns in coaching that we could potentially automate. And so it was a very interesting conversation to say, and to a degree, kind of cross some ethical notions for the future of, how would people feel if they were being coached by a robot? Is that possible? And so, Michelle and I had a really great conversation about that, and talking through behavioural patterns, learning patterns, all the sorts of things that AI is becoming smarter and smarter. The more data we put out there in the world, so everything from recording conversations and even coaching conversations specifically, from that AI is getting so smart and analysing it in such a way that it's actually identifying or preempting how to coach people through what through their voice recognition, or through what the transcription of that audio is coming up with. And so it, for me, was a real eye-opener that that's actually happening now as opposed to the future. So especially when we talk about we are future, that really is now. And so what she mentioned too is that some people might not even realise that some of the apps that they may be getting for counselling or coaching may already be Autobots or some kind of level of AI. And so when people say that they're not ready for that, or they feel like it won't create the intimacy that you can have between two people, they may not even realise that they're using it, which is kind of scary.
Yeah, it sure is. But what resonated with me especially was that it's not people who are made redundant, it's skills and tasks that are not relevant anymore. And it's about realising what it is that is unique to yourself, and how can you do that more, because it's a human trait. And it could be curiosity, it could be collaboration.
Yeah.
And also she mentioned that people don't want to work in isolation. It's very it's a very romantic idea to work independently and remotely. But people actually crave collaborating, being together with people.
Yes, connection's always going to be key. And I think that's probably something also worth mentioning is even if it does change industries, something like AI or technology changes an industry, that there will always be some need for critical thinking. So obviously a robot will only get you so far, so to speak, and that it gives us the pathway to spend time looking at some of the problems that haven't ever been, and we didn't ever have it to exist yet. And so that essentially means that, as humans, that all our roles are going to change, and we're going to be working in opportunities that we've never even probably considered or comprehended before.
Totally.
Yeah.
Scott mentioned a really cool term that stuck with me, and that was the term of the digital immigrant. And he referred to it as the fact that we have adopted to technology and we are embracing it. We have kind of a degree of mastery, but our appreciation of technology is still clouded by nostalgia for the pre-digital era.
Yeah, I think this really resonated for me too, because absolutely we are exposed to so much technology. We all just naturally as consumers take it on, but then it's this whole kind of uncertainty or not sure exactly how to use it in our day-to-day lives with the capability. And I think same goes with organisations, right, where they take on a technology knowing that it has the capability or to enable them to do something, but then there's still this uncertainty because there's no one expert, right? That's actually playing the role of helping people transition into how this changes things.
Yeah. And something that also really stood out that was the fact that technology enables us to know much more also about ourselves, that we've got the ability to know about our medical makeup, basically our biological makeup, so that all the lifestyle choices and environmental choices, all the behaviors and preferences that we show, we can actually align products with what fits for us best and don't have to rely on what works for the general population but might not be relevant for us.
Yeah, so even things like a smartwatch is obviously tracking data all the time on us, and we wear it on us physically. But then, from that, there's all this different data. We customize it based on how we use our smartwatch. Some of us use it for fitness, some of us use it to keep organized. Sometimes it's a combination of those different things. So it's only becoming more smarter, really, and more customized, customer. Let's just say flexible.
And speaking of technology, our next conversation with Simon Kemp was very technologically orientated. Something that stood out was the fact that work-life balance is not necessarily a thing anymore. It's integrating one into the other, and there are blurred lines. And rather than trying to fit something new in, like a new technology or a new way of working into the new way of business and the new reality, the thing that he sees is the most successful with the companies is to go back all the way to the core and ask yourself the question, what is the outcome that we're looking here to achieve?
Yeah, definitely. Simon has a real technology background, and so he's really seen how technology has enabled individuals and companies to achieve things that they would never have been able to with manpower, but also just all that data that technology can get, and then how it helps make decisions or make solutions in places that we haven't before as well. Yeah, so that was a really interesting conversation with him.
Yeah, and something also from the conversation that really resonated was this Venn diagram, when you've got the overlap between knowing what the employer is trying to achieve, but also that the individual knows what they are trying to achieve. This is where the sweet spot lies for happiness and the highest level of success. And we see that very often with companies, but also with the individual professionals, that they don't know what they stand for, they don't know what they're good at, and they also don't know where they're going. And if you don't have this clarity in there, well, guess what? You will never get anywhere.
Yeah, definitely. And that probably brings us to our last one for this episode, Matt. So Matt, from what I understand, because this was a conversation you had with him, he's quite the engaging speaker, right?
Yes. So, there was definitely the least structured interview, because we literally got into a conversation and it was just waffling on, but he dropped so many gold nuggets that I actually didn't want to edit it. And it also shows his style. I met him like 4 or 5 years ago at a conference in Brisbane, and he was the most engaging speaker. His keynote still stood out to me until today, and he only had one slide, and on the slide there was nothing on it. So it really speaks for how engaging he is. So definitely go back and listen to this episode. But basically what we were talking about was the future of work. And something that he said is, don't worry about too much of the future of work, because it's in the end like the past of work. There are so many insights about the past, and some things just never change, like wages or the output of work, how we show up, that we want to have meaningful reasons to get there. Something like that has always been true. So ask yourself the question, what is it that has always been relevant in your industry from a skill set, from an output perspective, and what does it mean in order to take it forward? Yeah,
definitely. I also liked listening to that episode, his take on this term T-shaped people. So the idea that as individuals we need to develop a deep functional knowledge in a particular area or specialty, and that, if you think of broad arms, so having horizontal skills, so having a wider scope in how we, implement or execute on those deep functional transferable skills is what makes us successful. So think broadly about the career, but always make sure that you have conversations that stay in your lane.
Yeah, and this is what makes you also valuable to an organization, because it's not necessarily what you know, but how you interact with others in this context, and what you share with others, and how your input affects the output from an organization. So don't be too narrow-minded about what you do to the team, but what you do as a team to the team and to the organization.
So this probably is a great way to finish off this first episode of the summary of our first few episodes for 2019. I hope you've got value out of it.
And we know that there were so many takeouts. So to make it easy for you guys, jump onto wearefuture.com and download the episode where we put together all the key takeouts for you to go back to it. And we can't wait for you to join us for our next summary take.
And that wraps up another insightful conversation about the future of work. And now we want to hear from you. What was the biggest takeaway from this conversation? Make sure you share your learnings on LinkedIn and also tag our guest speakers. And of course, if you or somebody you know has some more interesting take on the future of work, send us an email to contact@wearefuture.com. Until next time, and keep creating the future of work.